Hi everyone, thank you so much for joining us today. Today's webinar will be about learn how to create art and animations in Clip Studio Paint presented by Sarajean Chung. Before we begin the webinar, there are some housekeeping items that we'd like to go through. The webinar will be approximately 1 hour long. All attendees will be muted. Questions and answer session will be during the last 15 minutes of the webinar. Attendees can ask questions in the GoToWebinar question box right away. Due to time constraints, not all questions will be answered. The webinar will be recorded. The recording will be shared on social media and will be sent via email to all registrants and attendees. The panelists for this webinar are Fahim Nias, Mari Quiñones, myself, and Sarajean Chung. For those of you who have never heard about Clip Studio Paint or who are joining us for the very first time, Clip Studio Paint is your all-in-one solution for studying ready-to-publish illustrations, comics, manga, and animations. Learn more at clipstudio.net/n and graphicsly.com. And with that, we'd like to pass the reins of the webinar to Sarajean and her presentation, Learn how to create art and animations in Clip Studio Paint. Thank you so much.
All right, perfect. Thank you so much, Mario, for the introduction. Welcome, everybody. My name is Sarajean, also known as TheOneWithBear on all social medias. I am a freelance illustrator. I mostly paint, but today I am here to tell you about the way that Clip Studio Paint sets up their animation features, because I actually find animation to be super easy to be done in Clip Studio Paint, but it's a subject that's not very often talked about. So I'm really excited to cover this topic today. I used to be an animation animator for an independent game developer back in the days, and I used to use Adobe Flash. That's what it was called, all the way back then. So, it's been a while. And also, I also used to use Photoshop for animating as well. So it's honestly a really pleasant surprise that I realized Clip Studio Paint is able to handle animation actually very, very well. But because it's been such a long time since I started animating, since I stopped animating, so it's very exciting to get back to it. But before we jump into those features, I wanted to talk a little bit about what I do. Like I said, I usually only paint. I'm an illustrator now. I do a lot of different styles. I work with heavily oil paint inspired look in digital painting. And I use Clip Studio Paint for all of my professional work. So these are some examples of my stuff, and I mostly use oil paint flat brush. That is a default brush in Clip Studio Paint, and I will demonstrate those brushes to you today. And this is a very a personal piece that I recently just finished as well. So these are some examples of my work. But I actually come from a traditional artist background. So I do acrylic, I do ink, I do watercolor, gouache. I used to actually only do traditional painting. I was pretty bad at digital paintings way back in the days. But so when I look for the way that a software can be intuitive, I kind of go from how I treat paint or how I treat colors from a traditional standpoint, and I carry that into the digital painting aspect of it. And that's why I found Clip Studio Paint to be so intuitive for me personally, because it has that traditional feel, the way that the brush engine works. But I also do a lot of line art, which is another thing that we're going to touch up on today, because line art is what Clip Studio Paint is basically the most powerful for. This software is pretty much from the ground up designed for drawing and painting. So all of the features that it includes are catered to that. And these are some examples of my ink work, which is why I find the watercolor brushes in Clip Studio Paint to be so intuitive, because it really has that similar feel. And these are another examples of my ink. And also, so this is done digitally in Clip Studio Paint with that watercolor feel with the watercolor brushes. And same as this one, this is done with a smooth watercolor brush in Clip Studio Paint. So it's really capable of that super smooth blending or the very textural look. And this is also done with the smooth watercolor paint. So these are some examples, just wanting to show you how varied Clip Studio Paint can offer on its brush engine. But I'm going to, first we will start off with some of the brushes that I just show that I use in my personal paintings. But one of the greatest things about Clip Studio Paint is that all of their brushes are designed, they use the same exact brush engine. So all of these attributes are actually available across every single brush. So even if you change to a brush that has a completely different look, actually, let me show you first. Now, this is a oil paint flat brush. This is my go-to brush. The great thing about the brush engine is that when you are dragging the brush around, depending on your pen pressure on your tablet, I'm using a Wacom Cintiq 24 Pro 24. But basically, it blends itself depending on the pen pressure that you have. So it has a very nice and easy way to transition between colors, just like that. So that to me is super intuitive and super easy to pick up, because like in my painting, you can see that I have a lot of smooth transition, like such as these areas right here. So it's really easy for me to just kind of get those blending without having to worry about switching tools, without having to worry about smudging or blending, when I can just control that with my pen pressure. But at the same time, you actually can change to a watercolor brush using the same exact engine. So they work very very differently, but they use the same attributes. So once you kind of learn what to change and what's controlling what, then you can actually very easily change your brush to suit different look. So these are the watercolor brushes, and here's the smooth watercolor, where you can blend by just releasing the pressure. So that in itself changes a lot of things. Like I actually used other softwares for a long time. I won't mention what. I used to use other digital softwares for digital painting, but I always find the blending part to be very unintuitive, simply because I had to jump between different things so many times, or I have to color pick in the middle, and I'll always blend and color pick in the middle. Whereas when I discovered Clip Studio Paint, I just saved so much time, because all I had to do was really just releasing the pen pressure, and then it blends in so seamlessly. But also those things can be removed, because it's just one attribute inside ink. So this is the subtool detail that you can find in your brush panel. You just click on the little wrench icon and it will bring this out. If you check off color mixing, then this is going to act like a regular hard round brush or soft round brush if you have it, but if you enable it, then it's going to blend again. So that's really just one click of a button away. But today's point is not to really go too in depth into brush designs, but I just wanted to show you what is possible in Clip Studio Paint. Since today's, let me actually double check before I jump into the next segment. Okay, so the next part that I want to mention prior to going into animation is line art. So the line art portion of Clip Studio Paint is actually what, in my opinion, what sets the animation part away from the rest of the software. Because of how easy it is to manipulate lines and how easy it is to fill colors, to fill flats, it really makes the animation process a lot simpler and a lot easier. But before we get into that, we'll talk about how the line art is set up in Clip Studio Paint. There is something called a vector layer. I'm sure many of you are probably familiar with the concept of vector, especially if you have Adobe background or if you use other animation program that is vector based. So vector is a calculated path. Instead of raster, it is all mathematical dots, and I'll show you right here. So the image that you see is in relation to these paths. They're basically calculated in proportion to these dots that you create. But instead of using the pen tool or the anchor points drag and drop like you would in an Adobe product, in Clip Studio Paint, you actually just start a layer called a vector layer. So normally you would have a raster layer for drawing and painting, right? So for drawing and painting, you have the raster layer, but then with vector layer, you just start this button right here, a new vector layer that will have a separate icon on the side. And now all of the lines that you draw is going to be a vector line, like that. And what makes it very convenient is that it would enable the vector eraser so that you can erase these intersections. This is pretty much why Clip Studio Paint is a super well-made software for comic book usage, especially, and that's why a lot of the comic book artists or manga artists are using Clip Studio Paint instead of other software, because the ability to manipulate lines and also to clean up your inks when you're done inking your comic book pages. So I will show you some examples right here with what you can do with a vector line art. So this entire line art piece was done on a vector layer. And then you can go into the subtool for correct lines and you can actually thicken all of these lines that you see. Oh, that's really too thick, but just as an example, you would know what I mean. Like everywhere that I go over, so I can choose, okay, thicken these lines. Let's not go that extreme. And then you can just go over these lines to make them slightly thicker. So you can always adjust your line width afterward. Or you can scale up this entire, so for example, I like the way that the face looks and also the flower looks, but I just want them to slightly be slightly thicker, so I can scale up or down the width of this entire area while allowing it to keep in ratio. Oops, let's do that again. That's really way too thick, but you get the point. Or I want it to go back to a fixed width. So this is really useful, especially for animators, because very often a lot of the animation look especially the ones that you see in Japanese anime, a lot of the line art in itself is fixed so that they can have a consistent look. So if you have a fixed width, we want to go for a process whole line, and you can just go over the entire drawing, and it's gonna fix the width of all lines that were put down. And that actually, let's just go for one. So, no, yeah. Oh, missed spot there. So that's kind of how easy it is to adjust your lines in that sense. And another really great thing about it is also filling flat. In animation, you would constantly have to fill colors. And I know that many people will use the paint bucket tool or whatnot, but in Clip Studio Paint, there's something called a close and fill. It was originally designed for comic book artists who needs to do a lot of flats, but at the same time, it applies to animation as well. I will actually demonstrate to you later on how fast it is to be able to fill colors in a sequence. But right now, to kind of quickly break it down a little bit, you can set your line art as a reference layer. So right now we have the line art layer right here, and there's a lighthouse button here, set as reference layer. I'll click again, and then you will see the little lighthouse icon in front of it, and that's when you know that this layer is now a reference layer. And then we'll put colors on another layer. Now let's go into close and fill. Set the target color to only white and transparent. Refer multiple. Let's change it to reference layer. You can always allow it to refer to all layers if you so wish, but right now we're going to go for reference layer. And then what you do is just circle around the areas that you want colors filled. So the concept of this is it will detect all of the closed areas that is being detected within the circled area. So if I'm to circle this entire floral area, it will detect all the petals, the flower petals that were closed up. So just like that. Right now my line art is very, very thin, so you can see a bit of gap in there, but we'll go in there and use paint on fill area to kind of let it go over a bit. Like that. So you can always fill in the tiny little gaps by using the paint on fill area. It's going to detect those tiny little white areas that were missed. So, and because we had the oops, there you go. And because we have the target color set to only white and transparent, and therefore it's not going to overwrite the areas that already have colors. So even if I close around this area with the flowers again, it's not actually going to affect the pink areas. So this makes, filling in colors really, really, really easy. Let's see. We're not going to spend too much time in this, but just to give you a bit of idea of how these things can be set up within Clip Studio Paint and why it has helped me so much with speeding things up, because I think if you have been accustomed to using other software, you will know how much time stuff like this can take up. And the great thing about the animation features in Clip Studio Paint is that it's fully capable of adapting everything that you just saw into the animations features. So, like if you have tried animating before, you know that animation is a very tedious process. There is a lot of fine tuning, a lot of adjusting, and then if you have to, spend the time to kind of go into all of these small things it can just take up a lot of time and effort. So if you can very quickly fill these things and kind of speed up that workflow, it makes things so much faster and so much easier. But we're gonna get into the animation aspect. Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. All right, perfect. So to start animating in Clip Studio Paint is actually very easy. You just go into this part right here. So when you start a new file, you go into Animation tab, and there you go. You can set up your canvas size. You can set up how many frames, how many seconds. So playback time is how many seconds times your frame rate. The Clip Studio Paint Pro version is capped at 24 frames, and therefore right now we have a frame rate of 12. Our playback time is, we can have 2 seconds animation basically, because that will be 12 times 2, so 2 seconds. And 24 frames would be where the Pro version is capped at. I have the EX version, so I can have unlimited frames, but you can actually do a lot with just 24 frames, especially if you're wanting to just kind of start animating and just kind of have fun with learning how to animate in the beginning. Then 24 frames is actually more than enough to experiment, especially now that stickers are so popular. When you're using Facebook or you're using WhatsApp. Oh, actually, I don't know if WhatsApp has them. Facebook has them. A lot of apps, or even Instagram, those little animated GIF, those stickers. Clip Studio Paint is basically perfect for that. But I will show you. Let's set all of these to just 24 frames, and that's go into the timeline. So if you don't have the timeline panel, you go into Window and then Timeline right here. So the way that animation is set up in Clip Studio Paint is that everything is inside of an animation folder. If things are outside of an animation folder, it will not move. So such as the paper layer is outside of an animation folder. So the paper is going to be static. Let me actually change it. For example, if I have the paper layer right here, the paper layer basically is not going to move. So the animation folders in Clip Studio Paint serve as a layer. You can have a line art layer, you can have a color layer, you can have a sketch layer, and they all go into different animation folder. It's a little bit different in terms of the way that it's worded, but once you kind of get accustomed to the idea that animation folders are layers, basically, kind of corresponding to a painting, right? So a different layer in a painting would be different animation folders in an animation. But here, let's see how easy it is to start animating. So basically you just draw. Let's change this to white. So inside of an animation, each cell is going to look like a layer in your regular painting, but don't be mistaken. When you are working with animation, this layer is actually a cell. So different cell will contain different object that basically will serve as the moving part. So what I just did was creating different cells, and I'm going to go over the steps that I took, which is barely anything. And then now you can see it's going to play that, but I didn't animate all the way to the very end. But just like that, super fast, I'm able to create something that's a little faster. So sorry, create something that already moves. But what I did really was just assigning a hotkey to new animation cell. So if you hit new animation cell, then it's going to create a new cell, which looks like a layer in the layer panel. Let's enable onion skin so that we can see what the last layer looks like. So that's the onion skin allows you to see the previous cell and also the next cell. So you can see like the blue shape is the previous cell, and then the green shape is the next cell. And then now we're on cell 13. We're just gonna draw something else. And then I hit the button that is associated with new animation cell, and I just draw the next. And just like that, you can very quickly animate something that is in a moving motion. Okay, so let's see. Oh, that's actually not too bad. But you can see how easy it is to actually just set this up. It's literally hitting one button to add one new cell and then draw, add new one cell and draw. So I went into the shortcut setting, and under the animation tab, I assigned new animation cell to a /, and that's what I had been pressing. Once I finished drawing a cell, I just hit the / and then draw again, hit / again, draw again. So, you know, it really takes no time to start animating in Clip Studio Paint. It is a very frame by frame based type of animation setup. Basically, you just frame by frame means you draw pretty much, you don't rely on something like bone structure, or you don't rely on like different, how do you call it? Different sprites. Suddenly the terms are escaping me. But you don't really rely on too much tweening. It's really just very intuitive. You draw out the animation and just kind of have fun with it. So the really huge perk about animating in Clip Studio Paint is that you are able to use those vector layer to clean up your lines in the animation cell. So instead, if I want to, let's see. Okay, let's actually show you. So this was a little quick little experiment that I did when I was making the animation tutorial for Clip Studio Paint on the Wacom YouTube channel. But it's like a really simple animation, and again, it only used 24 frames, so you can actually do animations like this even if you only have Clip Studio Paint Pro. What I did with the line art, so the line art layer is in one folder, in one animation folder, and the top one is the little Wacom One box that I had. But you can actually use the line art. For your line art, you can put them all on the vector layers, so then you can easily clean them up. But what I want to demonstrate for you is actually setting up colors. So how you would color in an animation. So we're going to add a new animation folder, which is right here. So again, animation folders act like layers in animation. So we're going to add a new animation folder. We're going to put this folder beneath the line art, because that's usually where we put the colors. And then we're going to add a cell here. Let me not use the hotkey. We're going to add a new animation cell. And then we're going to set the line art as a reference layer. just like how we did it before with our regular illustration, right? It uses the same exact concept. It's just that instead of layers, it's called animation folders now. And then we want to go into our color layer, and let's see. So we will use the same feature that I just showed you earlier, the close and fill. Make sure it's set to reference layer. And then we can now just circle around. Oops, that's a terrible color. Let's use like a paler, I don't know. Okay, better. So we're gonna just quickly fill this entire thing. And again, we just hit the button to add new cell. So that was the / that I personally assigned. You can assign that to anything. That will go to the next frame and at the same time add a new cell in this current animation folder, which is the color folder. And then we just do that. Oh, I missed. So what I'm doing is really just kind of circling all the way around the entire thing, so it will target the closed area within my selection and keep on filling the whole thing. I missed again. So you see, if I don't close all the way around, like if I miss this part, it's not going to fill his left leg. So that's kind of the concept of it. You have to close all the way around. So just like that, you basically finish the flats. I missed a few spots here and there, but you get the idea. So that's really just how fast you can set this up. And it always really fascinates me that that you're able to use all of these features to make animating a lot less tedious. Oh, and also what I did to start play, I assigned the play and stop to F5 on my hotkey. So really it's just hitting that button right there, and also make sure that you have loop play on. If you don't have loop play on, then it's just gonna play once and then stop, right? So that's what I did. But like I showed you in the shortcut settings, you can basically set everything to a hotkey. And for animation, I think that is very crucial. You will want to set going forward in a frame and also going backward to a frame to hotkeys. So let's go into shortcut in animation and show you what I mean. So I set new animation cell to / the play and stop to F5. Go to previous frame. I set it to comma. That's comma, right? And go to next frame to period. So I can basically just set them right next to each other, so they're easy to press, easy to remember, easy to move around. Yeah, basically that's how simple it is, but you can obviously get a little bit crazy with how you want to design the whole thing. Like right now, these are just very simple examples to kind of introduce you to the animation features. But the next part that I want to show you is actually really powerful if you want to do something more elaborate, something a little bit more difficult. That is the light table feature. So I will actually show you like this. So light table feature is basically a reference sheet that you can constantly move around inside here instead of having to like kind of put it on the side without being able to move around, or put it inside an animation cell in case and then having to move that cell around, making it kind of inconvenient when it comes to referencing. So once you're inside an animation folder and then you want to enable the animation cells panel, so that is under window, and also oops, where did it go? Animation cells. So right there. And then we want to open, select and register file, and then we pick the reference that we want, and that will show up right here in the middle panel. So the middle panel right here, it means this reference sheet is going to be attached to this cell only. So if I go to the next cell, if I add another new cell, oops. Oh, wait, what did I do? Oh, there you go. So if I add another cell, that reference is going to disappear because it only was attached to the very first cell. Now, this is not an animated cell. This is just a reference that is there. So you will see that the number 1 cell actually doesn't have anything in there at the moment. And let's actually just draw something. So the big circle is what's really inside the first cell. And then the little character, she's really just a reference sheet right there. And then if you move to the second cell, the reference sheet is going to disappear. If you want the same reference sheet to be all across the entire panel, then you will want to drag this reference sheet on the bottom panel. So now it's actually going to be all across the entire timeline. If I create more cells, that character is going to be all the way across. So the benefit to this is actually you can very easily adjust the position and also rotate this reference sheet. If you have any sort of animation background, you will know that sometimes it's harder to imagine, like for example, the snake head in what position. So I'm going to show you real quick what I mean and why it's convenient. So if I want to say really quickly draw out the snake head, I'm going to make it really ugly because right now we don't have a ton of time. So we want this part to be like a starting point, right? Like we want the snake head. Like that's the best we can do right now. But let's pretend it's a very elaborate drawing. That's just pretend, okay? And then we want it to extend outward. So we'll go to the next cell. Let's actually also enable onion skin so we can kind of see this beautiful snake head. And then we're gonna use the light table feature to move this slightly more forward. Okay, now let's draw this again. Oh, so use your imagination, guys. You use your imagination. I'm trying really hard here. And then the third one, we just move the reference again, so that you kind of can stay in proportion and stay to make sure that you get all the details again. Okay, you know, that's it. I think you get the idea. Right. And then now we can make the cell invisible so that we can kind of preview our, make the reference invisible so that we can kind of preview our very beautiful, very lively animation there. But yeah, if you are somebody who needs to rely on very complex references or need to animate a very complex character, then this is a really, really, really great function because it can kind of allow you to, you know, kind of stay focused on all of the details or all of the movable parts really easily. So that is the light table feature. And there is also keyframing. Okay. So I'm just making sure that I'm covering everything that I wanted to cover. So here, let's use this one. Let's use this as an example. So now we have a little wobbly big bird thingy. And if we want it to move from left to right instead, it's very simple. You just go into this area right here. Oh, enable keyframes. So I enable keyframe on the very first layer. Wait. Oh, sorry. Enable keyframes, and I hit this button right here, add keyframe. So the very first, this was set the very beginning of the position until the next time that you add a keyframe, and then it will try to move itself to the last bit. So if I move to the very last frame and I set another keyframe, here, let's do move this layer. So the very first keyframe, let's have him moved slightly to the left. And then the very last keyframe, we're going to move him slightly to the right. And now it tweens the position of this bird. So it's going to try and walk or slide forward, which is kind of perfect because this character was supposed to be on ice. So I guess it's sliding around. But obviously, that was just a very quick example. Once you're more accustomed to animating, you can always kind of fine tune the steps and whatnot. And also, I don't remember if my PC sound can go through, so the next part might be a little bit weird. But in Clip Studio Paint, you can actually add audio as well. So I'm going to add an audio layer. What you do is you go into animation, new animation layer, audio. And then from here, you right click on the timeline, import audio file, and then you can just import any kind of audio file. I don't remember what file format it supports, but I think this one is an MP4 or just something really basic, really simple. So now whenever you play, I don't know if you can hear it, but let's just assume that you can. It's like so you can move this audio file to kind of help and match his steps. And then you can copy and paste this audio file anywhere. If I want it to be a little bit shorter, I can click on the very top right here and then drag it all the way over there. So, or you can, kind of move it around to match. That's where the step goes down. Then I'll drag this to match that. So now it's like, boop, boop, boop. I don't know if you can hear that, but let's just pretend that it plays through. So those are the things that you're capable of doing in Clip Studio Paint. And again, all of these functions are actually already available in Clip Studio Paint Pro, which I know that they just went on summer sale for $25. So the fact that a software that costs this much is capable of doing everything that I just showed you is honestly really mind-blowing to me. It's not even because I'm just honestly really shocked that there's just so much you can do within the software that is designed for drawing and painting, right? So if you want to get into animation, this is honestly such an affordable way compared to pretty much everything else that is out there. Okay, so the next part is the 2D camera. Oops. Sorry. How are we doing? Okay, we're doing pretty good on time. So this is also another really quick animation that I did as a demonstration. Now that's also pretend. Let's use your imagination here. Let's pretend that we have a really nice background there. I'm just gonna draw it out. So if you start another layer, by the way, in the layer panel, just remember that layers are supposed to act as a cell inside of any kind of animation file. So you have to kind of separate those mentality from a regular illustration file to an animation file. So if I start just any layer in here, this is going to be a cell. And that's, you know, draw, let's give it a background. That's pretend that's like a really beautiful, I don't know why he would be in mountain scene, but anyway, let's give it a moon or something. Very nice. Okay, so this background is now going to be pretty static in comparison to whatever that's moving. All right, so we want the camera to zoom into this little guy's face, right? So we go into animation tab, new animation layer, and 2D camera folder. Now this little folder, oh, where did it go? Oh, okay, sorry, I should drag it to the top. You see like this little camera folder that shows up, and everything else, these are the animation folder. So again, animation folders, they serve as the layers compared to your regular painting. So for example, right now I have this big body right here. And it is separated into different animation folders like lines and flat colors. And then the hand is also separated into lines and colors. And then the little blob is the very bottom layer. The animation folder is on the bottom. And now we just added another camera folder on top. Now I'm going to show you what this thing does. So right now, this entire thing is a still animated shot, right? But we want it to zoom in. So we want to go into this function and operation object. And then you want to shrink. Oh, actually, sorry, I forgot to add a keyframe. In the very beginning, you will want the camera to be in full view. So you want to add a keyframe here. That's the starting point. And then in the very end, we want to add another keyframe. And then in this keyframe, we want the camera to zoom in. And you know what? Let's rotate. Why not? You know, rotate too. Rotate like that. So we want this camera view to rotate and zoom in on his face in the end. And you can see because you have the keyframe enabled, that it creates a path of how this camera is rotating. All right, now make sure in the animation tab, playback settings, you have to render 2D camera. You have to have it checked, otherwise it's not going to do anything. Usually this is so that when you have a really large animation file, if you don't want it to take up time and then you already know how it's going to look from your experience, then you don't have to have this render out every single time because it's going to take time to render. And I'll show you what I mean. That being said, now when we hit play, it's not going to do anything. But why is that? Like, we already have the camera folder, you know, and it even showed us a path. You know, it showed us the path, but it's not doing anything. That is because the camera folder only controls whatever that is within the camera folder. So say we want the camera to zoom in, we have to have everything that we want to zoom on to be inside of the camera folder. Okay, so now if we hit play, it's going to take a little bit of time to render playback range. Now it's going to zoom in like that. So you have to make sure whatever that you want moved is inside the camera folder. Now, for example, if I want this background layer to be not moving, but instead we only wanted to zoom in on these two figures, then we simply just move the background layer outside of the camera folder. So you see, like now everything else is inside the camera folder and the background is outside of it. And that's hit playback again. So you see, it's only, it looks so funny. It's only zooming in on the two characters, but the background is still. So I hope that makes sense and also kind of shows you what it can do. Another great thing, I'm gonna not save this, and I'm going to show you how to export your animation as the last thing that we're going to touch up on today. It's as simple as going to File and then Export Animation. You can export image sequence. Just like if you are already familiar, I'm sorry, I can't really speak today. If you're already familiar with the concept of a sprite sheet, then this is what you would need. You would export the image sequence, so that will export everything, every cell into separate image. Or you can export a movie into a different format like AVI or MP4. But what I really want to talk about is actually the animated sticker. So animated sticker and animated GIF. GIF can include background, whereas the sticker can be transparent. So you can have transparency. Right now, let's turn this paper layer off so that the character has no background. And that's going to export animation and animated sticker. And you just basically save it. Let's save it on a desktop. Oh, where did that go? There we go. So you will set the size and frame rate. Was that 4 frames per second? I think so. Loop count unlimited. You can change all of these settings according to what you want, and then just hit OK. And it'll tell you that it's now completed, and then you can just open a browser and test out your animation by dragging the new file into it. And just like that, you can create a really simple GIF without background. You can design your own stickers to use anywhere that you want. So it's honestly just so easy. I really can't stress enough how easy it is to just start animating. There's no real extra gimmick as long as you can understand how things are worded and how things are built. If you want, I actually have I have a video that was posted on the Wacom's website that talks about all of the terms and also where things are, and also how to insert a new cell or insert a frame. I have all of that explained in the in one video. So this is more of a webinar just to show you what is there, but I understand that some bits of it I could probably take a little bit more time to talk about to actually show you how things are set up, but unfortunately we don't really have a ton of time today, and so I kind of skipped over, or kind of had to speed things up a little bit. But if you want to know the details of them, then check out that video where I really went over all of the buttons and where to find things. So that will conclude this session, and I hope that was helpful to you and just show you what is available in Clip Studio Paint. But Maria, do you have any question for me?
Yes, Sarajean, thank you so much for your presentation. We have learned a lot. I know there's a lot of things to cover, but we have a glimpse of pretty much the most important tools of Clip Studio, and also how to animate, which is really easy. And I think the tools you showed us will give us some inspiration if we want to jump into our own little animation. So And we have a few questions. So the first one will be about what's your hardware setup?
My hardware setup.
Yep.
So I am actually on PC that I built. So my CPU is Ryzen 2700, and also my graphics card is 1070. So and I'm on 16 gig RAM. But at the same time, before I upgraded to this, I really upgraded to this because I was streaming Monster Hunter
Mm-hmm.
on Twitch for a little bit, and that's why I upgraded to here. But Clip Studio Paint is actually super low maintenance. That I was on an i5 and also using onboard graphics card, so it was a very um, outdated PC, and it ran Clip Studio Paint without a problem.
Mm-hmm.
But for graphic tablet, I'm using a Wacom Cintiq Pro 24.
Mm-hmm.
Mm.
Here, for example, RL Robertson says, uh, when did you start using Clip Studio Paint, and what is one of your favorite features of the software?
I started using it 2 years ago. Three years ago. Yeah, 3 years ago. And I think my favorite is honestly the 3D model. There are too many things. I would say brush
Mm-hmm.
engine is probably first because that directly impacts um, what I do. And also, it's one of the core reasons why I'm able to have the styles that I do now. And I'm really not exaggerating when it comes to that. Um, but just how easy it is to blend. But at the same time, I would say the 3D model is definitely one of my favorites because I build pretty much all of my references
Mm-hmm.
for my work. Whether I'm doing traditional or digital, I make all of these references to help aid myself. Um, and this feature, I also covered it in the Clip Studio Paint tutorials on the Wacom YouTube channel if you guys are interested in checking it out, and also how to use these functions, and also just what is possible that you can do with this. And honestly, this thing has saved me so much time and also elevated the way that I do my paintings. Like for example, this painting right here, I I, I was always really bad with action scenes or perspectives, but I did this based on the models that I made inside Clip Studio Paint. So because it allows me to kind of envision those perspective and also those interactions between characters and their proportions, it made that painting so much more possible for me to achieve. So yeah, I think the 3D model is definitely up there, and I was just shocked that it's even included.
And it can also help you to reference your own animation, right?
Yeah,
To keep
exactly.
proportion.
Yeah, exactly. That's another thing that I guess I didn't mention today is all of these things are you can use them inside the animation. So you can actually set this up. Like if you want to have like an action pose or whatnot, you can put them on a cell inside one animation folder and just kind of draw over them. So you can kind of create like like an action running scene just by using these models first. Obviously now we don't really have time, but I can have like a really drastic perspective with it just,
Right.
yeah, this character running and such. Yeah.
Yeah, and you know, can also add like props or background elements within like
Yeah.
the assets that you can import.
Yeah, you can import like a background element. Right now our perspective is all warped. But you can actually just use these things to kind of mock up your animation really quickly. You can have like the posing assets, like there are a ton of poses. oh, there's a mopping. I guess that's a mopping, but we can turn it into like a running pose if we so wish. But all of these joints are movable, including all the fingers. So we can probably do like a running pose and then jump in the next cell or something like that. Yeah.
Here Carolina Pietlach asks, what's your favorite style of drawing? What are your inspirations?
So I get inspired by oil painting a lot. I absolutely love, I used to love going to museum and just look at, or art galleries and just look at oil painted paintings, because especially those who use a lot of palette knife, because those textures, when you see them in real life, it's just so, I don't know how to describe it, but it's so astonishing, because that kind of stuff usually gets flattened a lot when you look at it digitally, but then when you see it in person, it's so alive. And that kind of stuff impacts my art style a lot. And I think it's one of my favorite things to work with. So I like to add a bit of those textures, even though not completely imitating the way that oil paint looks in real life, because I do still love what digital painting look. So I don't want it to completely look like an oil painting, but even if it's just something that kind of just adds a bit of shadow here and there underneath a brush stroke, that stuff sort of brings my love for traditional art into digital. But yeah, I usually like to go for something that is very heavily textured and very colorful. Something like this, and the way that I paint the hair, they usually have a ton of kind of like the plastered or palette knifed look with each stroke. Yeah.
Awesome. Another question is if there are some online resources that you recommend for getting started with Clip Studio Paint. Well,
Yeah,
I
for
know
sure.
you did the Wacom series, right?
Yeah, the Wacom series, I don't know if that is posted in chat. Let me see if I can post this one. So I just posted a link in the chat if you can see. So that this particular series that Wacom was very kind to let me do covers all of the features that I personally use the most, and also all of the ones that I feel like really speed up Clip Studio Paint and kind of what sets Clip Studio Paint apart from everything else that is in the market. And I used Clip Studio Paint for 3 years, but I used pretty much everything else prior to that. And well, I used Photoshop for the longest time. And so that I was honestly just shocked that this thing that is so affordable can pack so much for drawing and painting. So everything from brushes, vector layers, and also the close and fill, and also the colorization, the 3D model, rulers, how to build manga. The manga really just kind of blows me away, and also the animation features. That being said, if you need, you can always go into the help menu, and under trainings and tutorials, I can show you this real quick. So Clip Studio Paint is super, super diligent about providing tutorials and introduction to pretty much all of the features that you can think of. And underneath that tips and tutorial tab, you can find this web page where they're sorted into like tutorials for traditional art style. You can click into it, and they have the step-by-step how to set up your brushes, how to design your own brush, how to blend, and also they host context and they host contests for those who take a lot of effort into building these tutorials. And this one in particular, I really, really like. I learned a lot from them as well, like how they set up their brush, what kind of colors they used. So yeah, if you want to learn more and even learn about how to do illustration in general, this is a really great resource place for you.
Awesome. And also remind people that we also on our YouTube channel from Graphicsly, we
Yes.
have hosted all the tutorials, I mean the webinars that we have done so far, including
Yeah.
Sarajean's and uh, webinars specifically about animation from Ruben Lara, for example, or creating concept art or character animation.
Yeah.
Um, and one last question is more technical. Thierry Lanfrancini, I think this is the last question. It's about having multiple layers of cells. How would you make it so that cell doesn't move for example, 6 steps or until next modification? Will you duplicate the same cell 5 times more, or
Oh,
can you add a duration to a cell? It's more
yeah.
like how would you duplicate and you keep a layer specifically for an amount of frames?
So basically what you will want, let me actually quickly start a new one so that I can show you. Basically what you will want to do is you only add cell on the frame that you want moved. So for example, right now we are on cell 1 on frame 1. So these are frames. By the way, these are all going to be explained in the video on YouTube on the Wacom channel, but let's just quickly, so we say 1 right here on frame 1. If you want this to not move until frame 7, you'll want to move it to frame 7 and then add another new cell right here. So number 7, so that is going to be number 2, okay? And then number 3, oh, and then now we can do new cell, number 3, number 4, and then, for example, we don't want it to move until 17, then we add a new cell right there, number 5. So now number 1 is not going to move until frame 7, and then it'll move again on frame 9, frame 8, 9, and then it won't move again until frame 17. So you don't have to actually duplicate anything. You simply only add cell on the frame that you want moved.
That's
I hope
awesome,
that
and also
explains.
will help you for like coloring backgrounds. It will use the same um, style, right?
Yes. So if you want to do like a background that is completely static, that doesn't move at all, you can just add a layer that is outside of an animation folder. So let's see. So now we have this layer that is not included in any animation folder. You can see that it's going to stay there for the entire time frame. So hope that makes sense.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think so. Um, well, we're wrapping the webinar here because we pass a bit on the timings, but I'm pretty sure we have all learned a lot. Thank you so much, Sarah Jean, for joining us.
Well, thank you guys so
And,
much for hanging out, and I really appreciate all of your time. And thank you, Mario, for the host.
and thank you so much. And thank you all the attendees for joining today. Um, For more information about Clip Studio Paint, please visit the website clipstudio.net/n and graphicsly.com. We will upload the recording of this webinar to our YouTube channel, Graphicsly. You can also search it on Celsius Web. On our Graphicsly YouTube channel, you can also watch all of the other webinars we have recorded so far. Next Friday, I mean this Friday 19, we'll have a webinar specifically about advanced brush customization in Clip Studio Paint, presented by Ruben and by Ryan Cardinal. So you are all welcome to join us. It's you can find the registration link on social media. Um, So also for more information about Sarajean, please add her on her social media: Instagram, Twitch, ArtStation, and Twitter. Also, the last slide, and just to close the webinar, I would like to remind you that, as we mentioned, there's a giveaway of a copy of Clip Studio Paint Pro among all the attendees today. So 3 lucky winners will be selected and will be contacted via email. So we will select the 3 winners from the email list from all of you who attended today. So good luck to everybody. We will, so yeah, well, good luck. We will contact you via email. So thank you so much for attend. I hope to see you next time. Thank you, Sarajean.
Thank you. Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you all guys for attend. And we'll see you on our next webinar. Bye-bye.
Bye.